Katamari Damacy. Either you've heard of it, or just thinking about the name brings back memories of bizarre images, colorful graphics, and happy music. Released by Namco for the PlayStation 2 back in 2004, Katamari Damacy is a game where you roll up a bunch of stuff into a giant ball. It's a simple idea that makes this game accessible to everyone. And that was the idea behind Katamari, for anybody to be able to have fun with it. Usually under a time limit, your goal is to roll up as much stuff into your Katamari as you possibly could. You'd start small, rolling up objects such as pins and Legos, getting progressively larger so you could roll up larger objects. Sometimes picking up oddly shaped objects such as pencils could make your Katamari roll kind of lopsided. Occasionally, you'd be searching all throughout the level, desperately trying to find something you could roll up before time ran out. There were some levels where the game just didn't end until you ran over a certain type of object. My friend would always get pissed off on the Ursa Major level when he would get his Katamari to a decent size only for a car to slam him into a very, very small statue of a bear, when the goal of the level was to roll up the biggest bear you could. Speaking of rolling up, what really made this game's style was how distinctly Japanese it was. This game is weird, but in the best kind of way. The opening cutscene alone is enough for you to know what you should be expecting. And oh god, that soundtrack. I still listen to some of these songs on the road just to cheer me up. The controls were pretty great as well. Katamari mainly makes use of the 2 analog sticks. It controls a lot like one of those zero-turn lawnmowers. Push both sticks to go forward, pull both back to reverse, push them left and right to strafe, and alternate the 2 to turn left and right. Press both sticks down to do a quick turn, and alternate the 2 sticks very quickly to charge your Katamari forward, which can be really useful when trying to get up steep slopes and mowing over a bunch of stuff at once. You can even manage to climb surfaces if you're just the right height, although this is kinda hard to pull off. All of this makes a game that I love coming back to. Sure, the game can be a bit short, but the replay value is really high. But really, who cares that much about replay value when they've made a ton of sequels to keep fans entertained? In late 2005, they released We Love Katamari, which got similar praise to the first. I haven't played all the way through it, seeing as my PS2 decided it wasn't going to read discs anymore, but the levels I played definitely held up. As far as home console releases go, the series continued on with Beautiful Katamari and Katamari Forever, both to decent reviews. That's all fine and good, but what about those of us who wanted to roll up on the go? Well, there were releases for the PlayStation Portable and its successor, the PlayStation Vita, as well as a spin-off Tetris-like game for the Nintendo DSi, but what about devices that we always have with us? Phones. Yes, there were releases of Katamari for the mobile marketplaces. Their history is a bit odd, though. The first phone release was for the Mitsubishi P904i. I honestly can't find that much information about this game. All I could really find is that the tilt controls were done with camera tracking instead of a gyroscope, and that sounds like a headache just thinking about it. Next up is Rolling with Katamari, a game you can still buy on the BlackBerry Marketplace for $5 today. From what I can tell of footage found online, it sounds like a fairly competent port for lower-powered phones. 2 iOS versions were released called Katamari Amore and I Love Katamari. However, both versions were removed from the marketplace in 2015. And that finally brings us to looking at I Love Katamari. It was the only version I could find for my phone, and I hardly see any mention of it. So how well does it hold up to the original? Is it the Katamari on the go experience we were looking for? Let's take a look at it and find out. The first thing you'll notice right off the bat is the original soundtrack is there, even that of the start screen music. Continuing on to the menu screen, we see that this version of the game is very similar to the first one, right down to the menu sound effects. As far as our menu screen goes, we have an About page on Saturn, a collection of level records over here, an exquisite collection of all the objects you've just rolled up, complete with cute little descriptions for each object, and the controls screen. And trust me, we'll get to these controls in a bit. If we head over to Earth on the right hand side, we can see that the first level we have is open to us, the Takeda Residence. Clicking on a level brings us 4 more options for play: Story Mode, Time Attack Mode, Exact Size Challenge Mode, and Eternal Mode. We'll check out Story Mode first. So what is the story in Story Mode? Well, the king of all cosmos was just kind of floating around in space, as usual, when all of a sudden he is struck in the head by an asteroid. Dazed and confused, the king of all cosmos thinks he hears a cat whiz by, given that a nearby alien ship passing by says woof woof. So he sends off the prince to go roll up a cat. No, I haven't glanced over anything, that's the entire story. And on that note, we're whisked off to Earth. He then tells us that all we have to do is get the Calico Cat within the 6-minute time limit. And that is Story Mode, getting big enough to collect an object and collecting it, trying for a new record time for each play. It's an interesting change from the game's original goal of getting as massive as possible within the given time limit. When the level starts, the first thing I noticed was the controls. They are tilt controls. Tilting your phone up and down serves as the forward and reverse controls for your Katamari. Tilting left and right will turn the Katamari, and other controls such as charging forward, strafing left and right, and quick turns are done with on-screen controls. So essentially you have all the same controls as the first game once you get over the tilting aspect. My biggest beef with this setup is that it's a bit difficult to see what you're doing when you're tilting your phone all over the place. That, and sometimes the tilt controls seem a bit too responsive and non-responsive at the same time. Good luck trying to balance your Katamari on small wooden beams to get some of the smaller objects. As far as the way the gameplay works, most of the stuff that makes the original Katamari is there. The physics are pretty much the same, and the graphics really have not changed much at all. It's Katamari. If you loved the original Katamari when you played it, you'll be happy enough with this port, minus the tilt controls. The only real noticeable difference I could detect was a lack of sound when picking up most objects, but I could just blame this on running this game on my Nexus 5, a phone this game was never intended to run on. The real differences come later, when you're close to finishing the level. You start to realize there isn't the same sense of scale as the original game and its sequels. What I mean by this is that in the original Katamari, you start at the size of a pumpkin, and by the end of the level you'd be rolling up entire islands, including the local weather. In I Love Katamari, that scaling is largely gone. In the first level, you go from rolling up caramels to rolling up the cat in the backyard. In the second level, you go from rolling up train tracks and shampoo bottles to ending up at a child. When you reach the 5th and final level, you'll start much bigger than houses and are able to roll up office buildings from the get-go. Your end game for that level is rolling up a tower and maybe a few islands. The sense of scale in the original is part of why I love Katamari so much, so seeing these smaller goals in I Love Katamari was kind of a letdown. It could have just been a limitation of trying to port Katamari to mobile. It could be hardware limitations, but the levels also might just be shorter because it's meant to be an on-the-go game. If you choose to replay a level in Time Attack mode, it'll be more reminiscent of the traditional Katamari level. Though, I feel like the limitations on level design make this mode even worse than Story Mode. Even with the terrible tilt controls, on my first Time Attack play at the Takeda Residence, I had 2 minutes on the clock and nothing left to roll up. I just had to keep still, trying not to bump stuff off the Katamari. A bigger level or more constrictive time limit may have helped this game mode be better. Exact Size Challenge mode works the best out of all the game modes, honestly. You're not racing against the clock, and the goal isn't to get your Katamari as big as possible. Instead, you're given an exact size your Katamari must be, and you must roll up the stuff around you, manually ending the game when you think your Katamari is the right size. This is actually a decent challenge, and can take a few tries to get right. It's based entirely on paying attention to what you roll up, and it works. Eternal mode is less of a game and more of a distraction. You really aren't given a goal. Your space dad just kinda says, roll to your heart's content, and that's what you do. I suppose it's good for getting used to an area's layout for the other modes, but the object placement differs per game mode, so it doesn't really help out that much. Even at the end, the King of All Cosmos says there's not much point in measuring it and just kinda sends it off. One of the things I did love about this game, though, is that in any of the rolling modes, each time you roll up an item you've never collected before, it gets added to your exquisite collection, where you can read short descriptions of every object in the game. Descriptions like, the market, a place where old people yell a lot and snatch things from each other. Pilcher building, lots of people live here in the afternoon, but they all go away at night, there must be a ghost. And oil tanks, it's filled with flammable water, hot guys and girls should keep their distance. It adds some charm to the game, so it's a nice little addition. And that's all I Love Katamari really has to offer. Despite its flaws, it's definitely one of the better mobile games I've had on my phone, and it's nice to remember a time when microtransactions didn't plague the market. I Love Katamari is like the blurb on the back of a good book or movie. It's a short and sweet summary of the original game, downsized so you can play it while waiting for the next train or when your friend is taking too long to meet you somewhere.